you, ladies, for joining us. What we're here to do today is to talk about your working group and one of the projects that came out of it. The purpose of these community interviews is to highlight the collaborations among community members, especially across research, theory, and practice. Other community members have shared that they want to know more in-depth context about the work of other members, maybe how to leverage it for their own work or potential collaborators. Let's start by introducing yourselves.
Dr. Lori Doyle, and I'm a faculty member, associate professor at Concordia University in Irvine, California. I'm also the assistant director of our Servant Leadership Institute. That really is where our character work is housed. We do a lot of internal research and internal curriculum development around servant leadership, as well as external outputs to our community. It's been just a joy to be part of KPCEL and to network and learn from so many amazing colleagues. I feel like we're in this work together to that point. It's just a joy to be part of this group and the larger network as well.
I'm Jolleen Wagner. I'm the Chief Mission and Advancement Officer at BRIA Schools, the Charter Management Organization Seton Education Partners. I work for Seton in service of BRIA and have helped found the character work across our 8 schools and done much of it in collaboration and partnership with those across the KPCEL network.
Thank you for sharing. And y'all ladies know me, but for the audience, I'm Ashley Brandon. I'm a member of the steering committee for KPCEL to conduct this interview today, but I am also part of this working group that we're going to talk about. And we're going to have a conversation about the Pedagogy and Practice group that you are a part of and the wonderful project that came out of this with fostering high regard through head, heart, and hands for inclusive and compassionate education. You all presented a workshop together at the last KPCEL convening in Memphis. You have some individuals, a part of the group, who aren't able to be with us today. Nancy Winfrey from Wake Forest University was also part of that presentation. Just wanting to honor that. Can we start with a little bit of context about your working group, and then we can talk about the presentation?
This working group goes all the way back a number of years to a conference at Boston College when Dr. Samantha Dean opened up a call for working groups. And we answered the call to join this particular working group. And we started off with broad focus on pedagogy. And then each subsequent year, we wove in subtopics along those lines and looked at different populations of learners, different modalities of learning, and different research projects that we could work on together. And discussions. It's been years of collaboration and discussion, and I feel like we've grown as a group. Even though our numbers might have gotten smaller, I think our topics and our reach has grown. That's been a great outpouring from this.
Agreed. I think I'll expand on a personal note and add to what Lori said by sharing for the majority of the time of this group, we've been largely populated by women in education, whether it's K through 12 or higher ed or research. And so we've also had the opportunity not just to look at pedagogy, but also to accompany one another through the genesis of life in lived experiences with almost a regular monthly meeting where we do wrestle with articles or concepts and explore them together, but also connect as humans, which I think aligns nicely with the work that we're all sharing.
I love that. Yeah.
Thanks, ladies. Why did you feel called to this group?
Early on, we were in Boston when this idea was proposed, and there were predetermined sort of topic areas for the groups that you could opt into. I was really called with this one as someone who, at the time in my professional life, I was responsible for initiating and training folks in our K through 8 model to do the practice of character education while also being charged with the responsibility of outlining the theory and making sure that the research behind it was lined up nicely, was supportive, and learning a lot on the way. For me, it was a call to be in community with other folks who either were already steeped in the theory or were already steeped in the practice. It seemed like a natural fit for me.
I love that you just set that up so beautifully because for me, those two words were the exact draw, but in the opposite direction. I have a background in social science research. And so this idea of what is the theory behind how we learn and how we teach and our curriculum development, and how does that affect us as humans in our decisions and our approach to teaching and learning and pedagogy? I was excited to add more practice to kind of my day-to-day interaction with pedagogy, which was more theory-based. And so I love the fact that we we really bring both of those lenses to our conversations. And I really think those two words sum it up. We kind of ping pong between theory and practice and everything in between, which I think has been a draw for all of us who are part of the group.
I would go so far as to add that I think it's also what's made this working group sustainable is because we have a shared focus, but it has enough versatility that there's always a doorway to engage through, no matter what we're working on personally or professionally.
That's true.
I love the community and the group. It's what brings me back. Do you feel that you've gathered and that you've been able to acquire theory to support your work or best practices that you can adapt or implement? And what other tangible projects or initiatives have grown out of it?
I think the project that we're discussing here today is a perfect example of that. It was Jolene who brought in this new framework, this high regard framework to the group. That was a perfect example of bringing theory to a conversation. Then this project grew out of that into a new working model, our, head, heart, hands model that we presented about. I think that's a perfect example of bringing theory to practice and introducing one another to a new concept and having it grow through our conversations and discussions.
And one of you explain what that theory to practice sort of looked like or what the presentation was about, any challenges that brought us to that project.
I can speak to what we developed or what we worked to develop, which, as Lori kindly named, started with this concept of high regard, which we did wrestle with the concept of high regard at first. We went back and forth as a group of what does that mean? What does it look like? What does it sound like? Is there um, any articles or research already done on it? And it sent all of us kind of into this research mode, not just to look at what was already written, but also what was being practiced in the areas that we were familiar with. Had this realization that there are, in fact, actionable strategies that you can use to integrate high regard into practice, which really promotes a culture of belonging for everyone who is in the classroom or at the table or just in the room where it happens, if you will. We started to examine this interconnectedness of a person's head or mind, a person's heart, and their hands in the way that that can cultivate respect and belonging, which is sort of where we landed as the easy way to explain the concept of high regard. We wanted to emphasize that high regard can be built through trust, empathy, and compassionate engagement instead of authority. We wanted to challenge assumptions about inclusivity and equity and really encourage participants to view equity as the intentional component of character formation that yields high regard.
We started with how do we want to bring practice to this high regard framework? From there, that's where the empathetic response, the heart, then the compassionate action, the hands, that's where that flowed from, really, essentially. That's where we thought we're onto this idea that in order to foster high regard, you can't just teach about it to the head. You have to incorporate these other aspects of the human response. It was really fun to put together and to present together at the conference.
There was mention that we didn't create an actual model or framework or something further. It was a presentation. But do you all think that that might be something to explore as a group for a greater impact with those who attended or
I think it's definitely still on the table as something of interest. I don't know exactly what that looks like, whether that is more on the practice side or the theory side. We got some great feedback from audience members that, we jotted down some notes and things that we would want to tweak as far as how we presented the framework. We sort of presented it in a linear fashion, and we got the feedback that most people saw it more cyclical. That really was eye-opening. We had a great conversation after the presentation ended on, wow, that was eye-opening to get that great feedback, that people don't enter this framework, this approach necessarily in a particular order. They might enter first through a compassionate action, and then the empathetic response and the high regard flow from that. Or it could be in a different direction. It could be someone has a heart response first, and then compassion and high regard flow. Or it could be that someone meets a person and they start with high regard, and from that, the compassion just naturally flows. That is something we said we were interested in investigating, how to tweak the presentation of this model or this approach so that it was clearly more cyclical than linear.
I would add that I think One of the things that happened is in the process of determining how to create an interactive workshop based on this idea, we created case studies that applied across different developmental levels. In the process of unpacking each case study, we created discussion questions that specifically related to either the head, the heart, or the hands. I think that accidentally pushed us into a linear reality. When we were unpacking the case studies with the group that came to the session, we started not just to hear them talk about the cyclical nature, but also to actually see it happen. I think all of us, if we had had 2 days of thinking time immediately after that, I think a framework would have evolved pretty quickly. Lori's right. There's definitely an interest. It's not off the table. It's about how do we get back to that space and that moment to look at not only what was happening in the room, but the feedback we heard at the same time and apply it to the case studies to see what could then be the next rising phoenix of what we originally presented.
I know our working group too is a little bit unsure of where we're going, perhaps. Do you think this could be an opportunity for others to contribute to this conversation or to join our group or even build on this particular work for just a specific project in the Pedagogy and Practice group?
For sure. It's an open door. If this sparks interest for someone and kind of tugs at their heart or taps at their brain, we would welcome feedback either on the theory or the practice side. And I think it's exciting to think about how this might grow.
I agree.
I'll share for anyone listening who's interested. You can email any of us, Nancy Winfrey, Samantha Dean, or Elizabeth Barclay, and Emily Farkas. You can join our group at any time or just send us an email to contact us and share what you're interested in contributing. What other topics or projects do you think our working group or community of practice would be interested in tackling in the future?
I think the opportunities are pretty endless. We're a pretty receptive group. Once anyone has an idea or a spark of interest and shares it out loud, we do a pretty good job of determining is there collective energy? Is there small group energy within the larger group? For example, a smaller section of us are currently working on something perhaps slightly related to this, but in a totally different vein and doing some research and writing together. I think the answer is it's broad. If you can connect it to pedagogy, we're probably interested as long as it's in the realm of character education. We like to hear each other out and see what the kind of dynamic and synergy is like, and we go from there.
We've done book discussions. We're bringing problems of practice to the group to discuss, or an article to annotate and share with one another. We have published together the Catalyzing Character magazine. A number of us have presented together. As Jolene said, we're open to what's next and what is something we maybe haven't thought of or haven't tried as a group. If others want to join and share their ideas, we would sure welcome it. If any of this sparks interest or you have thoughts to share with us, we welcome your feedback as well. Or maybe you have an article to share with us on one of the topics we've mentioned. We'd sure love you to collaborate with us in that way as well. We're always open to learning about new resources, new theories, new problems of practice that we can bring to the group.
Thank you, ladies, for joining me today and sharing with the community.